Well, the background really for this session is we've been participating in Google Summer of Code and OPW for a while. Actually, quite a lot of people, even in the audience, originally, have mentored people in Google Summer of Code or have participated. So, if anybody actually has, just raise your hand or stand up. Yeah, over there. Yeah. And I really just wanted to sort of have a discussion, is it working for us as a community? Are there any areas we can improve? How is it actually working? What's the experience for the participants, and so on and so forth. So I really kind of wanted to first, give everybody a chance to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about themselves, the project, why they applied for Google Summer of Code, why they decided to mentor, right? So who wants to go first? Oh, well, we'll just go around the table and then we'll do that. That's easier.
My name is Mindy Preston. I worked with Anil and Mort on the Mirage project. I did some work basically to hammer on the network stack and find problems and then fix problems. I should find a sexier way to say that, but that's what I did. I decided to participate in OPW when I finished undergrad a few years ago. I never really availed myself of any kind of mentorship or career services or development or anything of any kind. And with projects like OPW, you can actually decide to do that several years after you graduate. So that's pretty neat. And I've been quite happy with the experience.
My name is George Dunlap. I'm a maintainer of the Xen scheduler. I've been around for a while. So this year I mentored someone for the Google Summer of Code to implement the PVUSB support for libxl. And I'd say overall it's been a really positive experience to just to be able to take someone who's obviously very bright but doesn't have a lot of experience and kind of help them, introduce them to the open source community and things like that. I really love being part of the open source community, and I think contributing is really fun and kind of cool, but there's a kind of a big barrier to entry when you don't know what it is. So it's nice to be able to sort of pull someone in, and hopefully that'll make them easier for them to contribute, not just to Xen, but to any open source project in the future. So.
Hey, my name is Konrad Rzeszotek-Wilk. So I've been working in Xen ecosystem for the last couple of years, and also been mentoring for the last couple of years. I think I started with Google Summer of Code, and then when OPW came about, then I mentored as well. So I've been doing that. This year I mentored Ariana, who's right here with us. And one of the things that I really enjoy about the mentorship part of the whole thing is it's the same thing as George. You bring somebody and you give them all the experience you have, and you also teach them what you screwed up, so they know not to screw up. And although and you kind of go through and make you want to give all the knowledge you have, so they can do what you did, or not do, but much better. And I'm really thrilled that that's happening, and people are like coming back and also coming back into the fold and wanted to help and review and continue that. So this is really fun. How do we want to handle questions from the? Yeah, so actually, if you guys have any questions, just interrupt us and ask. Okay, I know.
Let's do the introductions
first. Sure.
I just want to point something out. Given we have 3 students from this year, the assessment for this year is over. So you can actually, if you have any problems with the program, you also feel free to.
That's a good point. Yeah. All right. So let me pass it on to you.
My name is Jyotsna. I worked with Anil and Dave Scott for the Mirage OS project. I wrote OCaml bindings for Amazon's EC2 API. And I participated in GSoC, and it appealed to me because, like most students, I'm an undergrad student, and we need to do internships. But I wanted to do something that was interesting and fun. And so I was looking for something that involved functional programming, and so this project was really spoke to me.
My name is Arianna, and I worked on domain support for Linux. I ported the drivers that I used to perform block I/O to the new multi-queue API of the Linux kernel. And I decided to apply for OPW because, well, It gives possibility to participate in the development of open source software that is relevant to both companies and education institutions. And well, the project was really interesting, so I joined.
So at this stage, just wanted to remind you, if you want to ask any questions to us, just raise the hand. Also, the same applies to you around here. There should be a friendly chat amongst us. So, what I was wondering is, were there any specific reasons, for example, you guys, why did you pick, Xen, for example, over other projects? Anybody wants to pick that up?
I picked Mirage because I thought it was super sexy. That's the honest truth. I was reading through the list of projects that were available and soliciting GSoC and OPW work on the Xen wiki, and it just stood out to me as something that was so exciting and strange and wonderful, and really spoke to a desire that I already had to do like crazy functional programming stuff in systems programming. So it was really a perfect fit, and I was really excited for the opportunity to just kind of dive in some kind of established way, and have some framework for getting something done.
Is that still true after the program?
Oh, totally.
You don't have to answer every question.
Oh, yeah.
I have an answer.
Well, I chose the project because I'm very interested in storage I/O performance, and the opportunity of exploring that with the help of an expert really, interested me. So.
All right.
Well, one of the things I think which interests me, George, is because you've sort of you've mentored somebody for the first time this year, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That with Elena a bit. But.
And Conrad's been doing this for quite some time, and I was just wondering, did that give you a new perspective on some of the problems a newcomer has when they engage with our community? And what do you think are maybe the biggest hurdles they're facing today?
I think in a way it's I think in a way it's a reminder of the kind of hurdles that I faced when I first started contributing. But a lot of times you sort of forget after you've been doing this for a while, like what it's sort of like. So I don't think there's any particularly bigger hurdles for our community than a lot of other communities. I mean, some parts of our code are more complex, but the basic thing of just the thing of like putting your code out there and anyone's going to like respond to it and like, oh my gosh, what if they think it's bad? And just a lot of the really practical things of like, here's all the little details you need to do to actually submit a patch and things like that, right? That you sort of forget, you just do automatically after you get used to it. But then when you're first doing it, you just like make all these little tiny mistakes and you're sort of worried about making mistakes. And to have someone that's sort of, I think, sort of safe to make mistakes with, that can kind of hold your hand through the beginning part of the process, I think was what seemed to be, I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but look, I mean, what I enjoyed being able to help out with. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Did you guys want to ask questions? All right, I'll do another.
Is my perception of the barriers and your perception different?
Yeah, exactly. So like for example, what were your biggest challenges, initially, when you started? What was the single big hardest thing, for you personally to start?
I think for me it was just like initially getting involved with the community. I felt like I didn't want to inconvenience people, and I didn't want to like say something dumb and have it archived on the internet forever. So it was just like, so my mentors in that respect were very helpful because they were people that I was comfortable asking questions too because they had an obligation to help me. So, but yeah, for me that was like the biggest challenge, and I see a hand.
Sort of following up a little bit on what George said, I wondered whether particularly interns could comment on. My impression is, and it's maybe being unfair to either Mirage or Xen in this case, but the Mirage process for many of the things that we do is what you might describe as an ill hoc. And I wondered whether that sort of slightly less structured environment, whether you felt maybe that was harder or easier to get to grips with, in that there's sort of maybe fewer rules, there's fewer processes, and it's a bit difficult to figure out what should be the right thing to do.
And on the other extreme is Xen, which Ariana was involved in, which is a very structured process. So we see that both.
For me personally, the lack of structure actually makes it more comfortable. There's less rules to break. But on the other hand, I do see how the rules sort of guide you and help you.
What question I have to answer? No, I think I personally prefer to have a more structured community because there are more reviews, there are more, I think there's more attention to, yeah, even the form of what you present is important, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of all. Did you want to? Yeah.
Something that was a little rough for me about working on Mirage, it's easy to say that there is no structure or there is no process, but actually usually what happens when that appears to be the case is there is a structure and there is a process, it's just invisible and not written down. So when you're new to the community, you can't just go and look and say, on a web page, for example, or on a mailing list without asking, how do I get up and running? There is this human process that gets involved there. And there are more human processes on the back end that also might be invisible to you. And if you are worried about people talking about how dumb you are in places where you can't hear them, that's not really super great for you. So for example, if I have a question that I think might be kind of stupid and I ask it on the Mirage OS list, I know that there's a large group of people who have communication about what's going on the Mirage list, but not on the Mirage list because they're physically co-located. That's something that, as a person who struggles a little bit with social anxiety, is a problem for me. So that's.
And yeah. And actually what's interesting, this isn't entirely new to our community, right? I mean, we had, when I started with the Xen Project 3.5 years ago, we had exactly the same thing. We had unwritten rules and conventions, and then, and that kind of made it hard for newcomers to really engage because they didn't know what was expected, they didn't know how to prepare themselves, and, and then we just wrote them down. Right, and now we have a set of rules. So, maybe you need to do the same.
Sorry.
Oh, cool. So, with this year's, internship, almost actually being over really today, right? Today's the 18th. So what do you guys?
Yesterday.
Oh, yesterday. Yes, it was yesterday. My God, I'm sort of event brain dead by now. Pardon? Oh yeah. You are getting paid for this. So what do you think you want to do next?
Next, I will be finishing my master's degree thesis, and I will be searching for a job, perhaps.
I want to continue working on my project. Towards the end, there were a lot of really quick, hacky, embarrassing things that need to be fixed, and also I want to stay involved with Mirage.
I've been dodging this question for a long time, but I'll say in the context of this conversation, if I haven't just burned my bridges too terribly, I'd like to continue doing fun things with Mirage unikernels.
So we've been talking the whole time. I've been asking questions. Do you guys have any?
Just a question for the mentors, particularly. You mentioned your own becoming self-aware of what it takes to enter the community, and don't do this, do it this way. The subtleties. Have you? And I hate to use the word. Have you ever thought of documenting that? Maybe, so that even if it's a little bit less formal sort of thing, just a reflections thing of, when you're starting to interact with the community, keep these things in mind, type of thing. Is that?
So we actually had that discussion at the Xen Hackathon, because that was one of the questions about reviewership. People review patches, but when you post a patch, you want it to be perfect. You want this to read like poetry. You want to be proud of it. And you want the maintainer to look at it and say, wow. All right, that hasn't happened to me yet. But, part of this is to kind of know what the maintainer expects. And we were talking like, could we do a file of what this maintainer expects, of what it is that he or she is looking forward, so that person who is going to write a patch will know what to do. And we're saying this is a great idea. We really didn't do any further than that, but we did try to figure out. But it's more a personal thing. You got to get an idea of what it is that they're looking for, because some people will. But that's the beauty also of doing open source development. There are many eyes on the code, so a lot of people will have different views. So you might write it and have it great for this maintainer, but the other maintainer is going to look at no, we want it differently. So unfortunately, the real answer is you just gotta persist and kind of develop and work and I mean, that's I guess part of what we mentors do. We try to shortcut that by answering all these questions of like, this is no, don't do it that way, do it that way. Linux kernel does have a patch documentation that explains how to submit patches, and it's very similar to the Xen one, and I've been using that as a reference. So.
Sorry, if you yeah. And a number of our things actually are like the patch submission process. We do have documents about here's how you do it, here's the requirements, here's what kind of a good patch that looks like, descriptive in words. But ultimately, I mean, there's a reason that people go to university instead of like just buying a book and then calling it a day, right? Is that having feedback on your creative process and saying break it down in a logical order, or if you put RFC in front of it, almost anything you post is fine. Don't worry about it. It's just different having that written on a web page somewhere than having someone give you feedback on the thing and say, actually this sounds good, or actually you'll probably need to change this and this and this. So it just I think that some of that stuff, a lot of the stuff we have written down. But it's not necessarily in a format that's just because it's written down doesn't mean you can actually you've picked it up, you've learned it, right? So having something that you can sort of be safe to sort of make failures with, even with the stuff that's written down, and then oh right, I get it now, I think is helpful.
But after the program, we as mentors and we can maybe get together, have an hour brainstorm, and maybe look at some of the documentation. We can improve as one of the document days, right? I mean, that's while it's still all fresh. That's certainly something we can do. I remember like one of you was previously also. So is it the first time you participated in OPW? I think one of this year's applicants did OPW before, and then Google's. Okay, cool. So she's not here because I kind of was really interested to see whether there was a difference between like the Linux kernel and Xen Project community, but yeah, tooling couldn't make it. Yeah, and I thought, sorry, my fault. So, maybe another question is, what could we do better, as a community to welcome new people and keep them around? Do you have any ideas? Anybody wants to pick that up?
I actually think that's a really hard question because my experience interning was pretty good. I felt that the community was very helpful. The only thing I would say is maybe having the interns like formally meet, I guess like via email or something at the beginning would be interesting because there were other people. yeah, like me and the other two meeting and whoever else was participating, because there would be other people like going through what we were going through and meeting those same deadlines and these same experiences in the organization.
That's a really good point. We never actually did that. We had 3 internal tools here, right? No, how many?
No, we did introduce everyone, but then I didn't kind of force you guys to communicate, so I didn't have at the beginning. But yeah, I think that is a really good point, because that makes things also a little bit, that makes things easier, because you now met each other, and it kind of builds a stronger bond, somehow as well. Maybe we can do some online, thing like a Google Hangout, or I mean, getting everybody together face to face obviously is really challenging. I mean, this year, Ariana's from Italy. You guys are based in the US, and I would have liked to bring more people over, but if we had people from people from China, India, Africa, and Germany, and it's really expensive and hard to do that, right? But there's certainly online ways how we can do that, through a Hangout or something, and then just keep things going. Now, yeah, we do have some tough questions there. Well, there was one you wanted to ask about Linus's rants, so I just.
George was more curious.
Oh, so I'll repeat the question. Well, so I guess the question. So I'll just read it. Yeah. From your culture's perspective, the culture of Xen Project, I guess, or Linus Torvalds. He's sometimes walking down the hallway. Linus Torvalds. Rants. Right. An acceptable way to express technical frustration. And I guess you can search for, Linus Torvalds rants, whatever, and you can see some of the things that he says. So, okay, we say acceptable way. I mean, it's certainly not in the Xen culture. That's absolutely not. And I don't think it's a good. The short answer is I don't think that's a good idea. Yeah, he's having a rant right now. Like I don't think his sort of the swearing and things like that are a good way to run a community. That said, I do think there needs to be a slight distinction made between things that are attacking behavior and attacking code, and things that are attacking people. And in my experience, I looked at this. Or there's a link here. Of all the rants that I've seen Linus ever make. He calls behavior stupid, he calls behavior bad, he calls code stupid, but I've never seen him imply that the people themselves are somehow inferior, or I've never seen him demean a human being as a human being. Does that make sense? So, although I certainly wouldn't run my community that way, I could probably, work with him because he doesn't demean people. But one of the problems I think is that there's the kind of polite and impolite, and then there's on one spectrum, and then there's the discussing code and behavior, and there's talking about people, right? And you can be polite and demean people, and you can be rude and demean people, right? And demeaning people is definitely, absolutely, it's caustic, and it shouldn't be tolerated in any community, whether it's polite or not. Yeah, and I think sometimes people could get these two things slightly confused. So people see Linus's, swearing or whatever like that, and they think it's okay to demean people, and that's not okay. Or people think that since I'm being polite, even though I'm demeaning somebody, that's okay. That's not okay either. So the biggest important thing is, are you focusing on, specific behavior which you can change? And Linus always makes it clear what kind of behavior he wants instead. In my experience, or are you demeaning people and putting them down? That's the most important thing. But even so, even though Linus is on the good side of that equation, I do think being more polite, direct, but polite is a better thing in my opinion.
So I'm going to take the microphone and because this is an excellent transition point. So one of the things that we're discussing is how is Linux community different from Xen develop community when it comes to these sort of things? Like, do we have the same issues that they have? And in some way, you raised 3 important points. That was the behavior, the code, and people. We don't have the people issue. But interesting about code, like one of the things as an engineer is, I post my patches and they're my baby. And somebody reviews it and they show me that baby has warts on it. Some other people look at it and they show that it has cancer in it. By the end of it, they have killed my baby. It's distressing as a person who wrote this code to see this being mutilated. And it's a hard thing. And it's worse because you're in the open source community, and worse yet, people can go back in the history and look at it. And it's kind of a reminder of things that you have screwed up, or you thought you didn't screw up, but other people certainly thought so. And I don't know, and that reviewing thing, there is ways to make that easier. There are some people excellently reviewing code and giving you positive, constructive feedback of saying, hey, do it this way, that way, this way. Some people are less so. And I don't really know how to make that transition so everybody would be great at it. And sometimes it's also a culture thing. Some people just will not, in their culture, if you're polite and you ask for something, the other person will just ignore you because you're asking for something and I don't want to do it. You have to be direct. At least that's my experience as a Polish person, that you got to really have a command of it and saying, I want this. And some other cultures, it's completely different. You should really say politely, can you please do it? But if you say it directly and say, do it, you're going to be considered a jerk. So there's a fine line to walk also based on culture of where the person is coming from and the reviewer is coming from and kind of matching that. And it's really tough. Linux community had that problem with some of the people from Asian countries or from Japanese countries. If you told somebody that a code is bad, that would reflect badly on them, reflect badly on the company, and the end result is the company is kind of like, well, that reflects really badly on us, so let's just get out of it so we don't lose face. It's really simplifying the case, but that happened, for example, in this community. So the answer to that is you really got to walk a fine line when you're reviewing code and being mindful of who's posting patches, where they're coming from, so that you don't make those mistakes. And that's really about it. And it's hard. Sometimes, as a maintainer and reviewer, sometimes I just, I'm at 3 o'clock p.m. and I want to go home, go to the pub, and there's these patches. I go through it and I'm like, no, I told you this is the 5th time. And I lose patience. And that's really bad, but it happens. And if I did that, I'm really sorry. All right.
Yeah, we're all human, right? And it does also help, when we all get together and get to meet each other and maybe get drunk and tell the one other joke, right? So we're almost out of time, right? So I kind of wanted to come back quite quickly to the original question. Is OPW and Google Sum of Code really a good thing for us? For the community. There's a slight bit background to this as well. In that the advisory board. We have some funds available for these kind of programs, and I guess the underlying question is, should we spend more on it in future? Do we have the capacity to expand? Because that also requires having more mentors and more people helping out, taking on new volunteers. Maybe that's just my final thoughts, unless somebody wants to respond to it. No? In that case, yeah. Pardon? Yes, there's one ex-OPW here, and then we have, in fact, actually what's quite incredible, I mean, I don't know what the success rate, if you mean in terms of people sticking around for other projects is. Well, actually what's really surprising is in all the time in the Xen project, or Xen.org before that, we have a rate of about a third of people sticking around, right? Or even more. Yeah. Way as well, right? Daniel, Elena. So we actually had a really great, turnout, if you want to call it that way, right? Which seems to mean that we're doing something right, compared to other communities. And the other thing, which I found really surprising this year was that so many women applied, to Xen projects compared to many of the other projects as well, which is great, as well. Yeah, I think, Eleanor, you had a bit to do with it as well. You've been, but word of mouth is good, right? All right, so. Any last comments, questions?
Just something that Joseph pointed out yesterday was that she came in GSoC, and she's missing out on all the emails from the OPW list. So it kind of felt, if we as a Xen project just kind of normalize some of these things so that the GSoC students get the same kind of mentorship that the OPW list has. You could just almost be just forwarding the emails, right?
No, but you see, because you see, we're on both programs, and I always treated everything as if it was similar, I had everybody always on the same list when we had communications, because I was just too lazy to send out two separate sets of emails, and the programs are basically, same deadlines, almost the same process. Yeah, they're not exactly the same. Yeah. And part of the reason why I didn't do that is that I actually didn't know the difference myself. Because this year was the first time when we kind of did it at the same time. And when we did it the first time, even so I was the program manager for OPW, I didn't actually have to do anything. So, because Conrad and Stefano did everything themselves. I'm not sure that that's possible. I mean, we can try that, but I don't think that's entirely realistic. But this time, at least we know what the differences are, right? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the main differences are mainly due to the scale of the programs, right? OPW is relatively small in terms of the number of people participating, so it's a little bit more relaxed and a little bit less paperwork, and things just, sort of happen and get prompted by individuals, and Google Summer of Code is a little bit more form filling and. Pardon? Oh yeah. Well. Let's not get started on that. Yeah. No, I think that would be really unfair. Yeah. Anybody else? Any final comments? Questions? No? So thank you very much. Also, thank you everybody for attending the summit. Now, those of you who want to come to the developer meeting tomorrow morning, it's at 9:30. It's in the room right next to the BOF room. We sort of didn't really do the sign up very well, so there's space for 30 people. So if you do want to come, turn up, and then we'll just improvise if there's more than 30 people, which is fine. If you have any feedback, how we can do the events, better in future, or what we should improve, just drop me a line. BOF notes, slides, and so on and so forth will all be posted like usual. Also, the presentations are recorded, and I will send everybody who has registered an email with all the links where you can find the material. So thank you for coming. Thank you for participating, and making our community so great. And I hope I'll see you all next year. And then I have a final thing. Someone who went to the party yesterday left a charger. So if you're missing a charger and come and find me, otherwise I'll keep it. Thank you.